Loki looked up but didn't see Isa. He looked around. The only thing he could see was the tree under which his clothes were drying, laid on the rocks under the warm light. He looked around once again, unable to see the girl, and frowned. As they were making their way down the mountain, once arrived in the valley, they found a river and a bend in it, partly hidden behind rocks. They couldn't help themselves, and they were there with the intention of solely drinking fresh water and washing their faces. But after fighting the dragon, who didn't have any fresh breath at all, the wandering in the crossway and the dust and sweat that covered them, and Loki's emotional trauma, they decided to bathe. Plus, he was the prince used to bathe every day. He could bear of being sticky for a few days, but too much was too much, and he needed all of his strength and well-being for Utgard. They had decided that while Loki's clothes dried, he would bathe in the river while Isa kept an eye on the surroundings. When he got done bathing and dressed, the girl would take her turn in the river. Loki definitely didn't plan on being as pure as her when she take off her clothes, but now she was gone, and he didn't like that. He ignored the beating of his heart that resonated in his ears as he advanced towards the bank. Looking around, still dripping, he got out of the river, ignoring that his underwear stuck against his skin, and he looked around. Isa? He called, frowning. He didn't like the idea of her being away from him. He would much prefer to have her by his side, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that she saved me and that I hold on to her like a light in the darkness. He fought to himself, clicking his tongue in annoyance. Since when I'm so pathetic around women, he muttered to himself before walking a little further from the tree, looking for the setter user. Loki froze when he walked behind a stony wall, seeing Isa's boots on the ground. Farther away, her clothes lay on the dusty ground. He looked up and his mouth fell open, his heart suddenly bursting into flames at the vision in front of him. Isa was on the river back to him, bathing and brushing her long auburn hair with her fingers. Water reached her waist, giving him a view on her back, tempting enough to throw him off balance, but definitely not bare enough to taste. So she was covered in bruises and scratches, but she appeared to him like the most tempting creature he'd ever seen. Hearing some sounds behind her, Isa looked over her shoulder and blushed madly upon seeing a completely naked Loki observing her. She gasped and turned away, covering herself with her arms. "Loki!" she exclaimed. She tried to make her voice reproachful, but it was closer to a squeal. "Just stop looking!" she exclaimed when she realized he wasn't moving. He didn't intend to. "Why, I've always seen women before," he said with a shrug, trying to ignore the fact no matter how many beauties he had met, none captured the charm Isa possessed. She turned her head to glare at him, but ignored her and approached the water. "Well, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice barely higher than a whisper, her whole body turning red from embarrassment. "Joining you, obviously. I would rather enjoy a bathe together than staying away from each other. It's safer this way," he explained with a huge grin. He stared at him with a hard gaze, even if his explanation made sense. They both knew he was joining her for other reasons. A amused gleam in his eyes and a proud smile made his true intentions explicit. Even if his smile didn't quite reach his eyes, Loki was feeling better after walking under the sunlight and being away from the crossway. They had both decided to ignore what happened in there for a moment. She rolled her eyes when he approached her with a silly grin, but she couldn't help it herself and smiled back. How shocking that a prince of Asgard would share the same water as a low subject. He mocked with a low, light voice. "Seeing you like that, I can't think of you as a low subject," he replied, lifting up a hand to brush her bare shoulder. Isa shivered at the contact but stayed still. They both felt the electricity run through their entire bodies at the simple touch. Still turning her back from him and keeping her arms around her bust protectively, she tried to ignore the prince as he slowly leaned down towards her, his fingers barely brushing her with his breath, unusually fresh, hitting her neck. He observed her reactions closely. Amused by her stubbornness, he approached his lips to her ear, talking in a low that vibrated against her skin through her entire body. "You appear to be brighter and more majestic than a queen." he whispered before biting the lobe of her ear lightly. She yelped and jumped a little, looking at him with the big, shining green eyes. Loki felt his heart melt as she stared up at him, unable to break the eye contact. Your clothes, and we should take turns, bathing to keep an eye on, she stammered in a breathless voice. I should remind you that you left first to bathe on your own without telling me? Without inviting me? That's very rude, he answered, fidgeting hurt. Iza's chest was heaving up and down, and she forced herself to turn away from him, no matter how hard her heart was beating against her chest, and no matter how flushed she was. I'm sorry, the water was too tempting, she murmured, trying to look away from his eyes as possible. Loki put his hands on her shoulders, pressing his fingers into the skin to make her stop breathing. The pressure was just enough to show dominance over her body. He leaned down and breathed in her smell. She smelled of sweat, dust, and the fresh water hadn't cleaned her upper body yet when he had appeared behind her. But there was a slight scent of flowers. He didn't recognize it, but it was familiar and sweet. His lips kissed the skin where the shoulder met her neck, and she sighed despite herself. He kissed her higher in her neck. Instinctively she turned her head to give him more space, taking it as the invitation he was craving. Loki wrapped his arms around her waist and pulled her against him, slowly making his way towards her face. Loki, she breathed, her voice making his blood pulse harder in his veins. He kissed her behind the ear, and then her jaw, and then her cheek as she put her hands on his, her fingers digging into his skin. He brought her closer to his torso, and their bodies molded together perfectly. He should focus on, she tried to say, but his lips reached the corner of her lips and their eyes met, watery green eyes against emerald green. She leaned forward, and she started to close her eyes to welcome the kiss before suddenly turning around, stepping away and putting her hands on his torso to keep him at bay. He stared at her in disbelief while she struggled to form words, her lips trembling and her cheeks burning more than ever. She started. He froze and frowned, glaring at her with a cold gaze that sent shivers down her spine. But this time, it was out of pleasure. Don't you not want me to kiss you? Is my touch too repulsive to you? He asked in a hard voice. No. Should I remind you that we kissed already? If I call correctly, you enjoyed it. If my touch is too repulsive to you, he continued, ignoring her stammers, you should have stopped me at the beginning instead of flirting with me and letting me get a hold of you and kiss you if you were giving me a chance. Loki, I don't understand why you wouldn't let me kiss you another time, and I... He was stopped suddenly when she grabbed his face and pulled him down to her, their lips crashing against each other. Loki opened his eyes and his body frozen for a short moment before pulling her body against him, keeping as close as to her answer her kiss wildly. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kept her against him. Their bodies were so hot that a miracle in the water against them wasn't turning into steam. Okay, there's NSFW stuff, so I gotta skip a bunch of this, guys. I'm sorry. I cannot narrate this because it's going NSFW. You know, I cannot, I cannot narrate it. It's getting NSFW. Okay, I think we're at this part right here. We should start getting dressed. Our clothes must be dry by now, Isa said, getting out of the water and putting her clothes back on once again. Her voice brought Loki back to reality, and he sighed, lifting himself up on the bank before going back to the tree to get dressed. He might not know what to feel about everything, especially not about Isa, but she was right about one thing. They had to focus on their mission in Utgard. Are you ready? He finally asked once he was fully dressed again. She turned towards him with a smile and nodded, finishing braiding her long hair before advancing towards him. She looked up and down at his clothes and pouted a little. I prefer what I saw earlier, she murmured in a slightly mocking tone. Isa laughed and Loki couldn't help but smirk back, the mischievous light in his eyes shining once again, even if determination was the main motion on his face. Let's go, he said in a firm voice. After a few hours later, they had climbed to the edge of the city, trying to appear as normal as possible as the mountain giants were starting to show themselves. They were completely different from frost giants and actually looked like any Asgardian. I would have expected them to be more stony, Isa whispered into Loki's
Hey
ear
everybody,
after
so today
passing
we
by
are
several
back with
giants.
more
They lived in the mountains, but the climate is
Flashpoint
quite
Infinity
close
games.
to the one of
So
Asgard.
today we're going to be
Their
playing
bodies
Card
and
Clash. This is a
metabolism
Kim
are close
Possible
to ours,
game
just
that has
bigger
been
and
around
stronger,
since,
he explained,
I
glancing
guess
around
the
to make sure
2000s.
no
If
one
you guys
was listening.
remember this,
Loki
you guys
felt
probably
relieved
remember
to
this Kim
realize that
Possible
men
game.
weren't
So
much taller than him or four,
basically,
and
you have
that
to
the
play
women were
against
only a
Dr.
little
Draken or
bigger than
Shido. I've
Isa.
never played
He still threw an
against Dr.
illusion over
Draken,
their features,
but
faces, and clothes
we're gonna do
to fit the
Shido,
usual
and
mountain
you can have
guardian's
villains
proper
or
outfit.
Team Kim.
The
or
arms
team...
and shoulders of the mountain guardians, men or women, were incredibly muscular, considering that they were working on the mountain stones and rocks at all time. Their legs were so strong too, from constantly climbing and walking to such a city.
Not having good luck so far.
Asgard's had habitations began in the Sid Valley with
Why do I always
peasants
get bad
and
shitty
farmers
cards
who worked
to start
in the fields by the river, but most of their food came from the commerce with every cities in Jotunheim. As soon as the mountain started, the path started climbing. A few houses appeared. All the streets were sloping and crossing with one another, creating a real maze of houses, streets, and shops, all made from rock and the mountain itself. All above was the huge fortress of Asgard, where the king of mountain giants, Fafnir, lived. Where should we start? Isa asked in a low voice.
But I'm pretty sure it is.
Shush, don't say a thing. Follow me and obey me, Loki ordered without glancing at her, keeping his eyes on the surroundings. She stared at him, but he didn't say anything, keeping her silence as they slowly made their way to the heart of the city, where most inhabitants and where commerce was bustling. Even if some people glanced at them, they didn't stare or look suspicious of the visitors of the city. Loki and Isa saw a huge banner hooked between two buildings as they arrived in the center of the town. I don't know what the mountain giants' language. What is it they're saying? Isa asked. It's market day, he answered, reading what was written on the banner. Today, on the 15th day of the 5th month of the 347th year of the King Fortune's region, takes place the annual Great Market. It reunites of all Jotunheim merchants who travel with his knowledge of the mountain giant's calendar and the Asgardian one. Loki quickly counted the days he had been away from his home. 5 days, he suddenly said, swallowing. 5 days? We've been in the Crossway for 5 entire days, which means I've only had 3 days left to get the information and go back to Asgard, he murmured darkly, frowning at the turn of events. We have to hurry. What do we do? She asked again, sounding impatient. Just like I said, you must obey me and stay silent, he said, offering her his arm. Isa hesitated only for a moment before grabbing it, realizing that they would appear as rich mountain giants couple visiting Asgard for the great market. As soon as they got closer, Loki and Isa sensed that there was the important day of commerce in Jotunheim in Asgard. On the biggest plaza were lined numerous stalls with various products, from food to jewelry, clothes, and spices. Loki knew they were usually some Asgardian merchants set by the palace's crooks to buy some rare spices. With the war at stake, there probably wouldn't be any except for him and Isa, who were just disguised.
Oh my god, every time she
Many
goes
giants,
no, I'm like...
mountain and storm mainly,
but
he saw some blue-skinned frost giants far away and decided to stay away from them.
Doesn't look very happy.
We're here, but Loki realized some of the other people from the other worlds, such as Dwarves and elves.
However, I could be wrong.
No Vanir, probably because the Vanir was Asgard's closest ally. Who wants some fish? Just fished up some uphill of the river this morning, one of the merchants exclaimed joyfully, showing the fish at his stall. Loki only smiled politely at him as he continued to walk slowly through the middle of the happy crowd. What a bad day to come to Asgard right here when there's such a market, Isa grumbled after being hit by someone. We'll never reach that fortress like that. What are you talking about? It's the best day we could have hoped to come, Loki answered with a satisfied smile. She threw him a questioning look and he answered, keeping his voice low. It offers us too many opportunities, and we can get information much more easily without attracting too much attention. He noticed a mountain guardian giant, who was probably the nobility or at least very rich merchant, considering his clothes, walking right towards him, talking absent-mindedly to another giant on his right. Loki turned his head towards Isa, as if in deep conversation with her. Act natural and look at the jewelry stall, he ordered in a low voice, not smiling. Why would I? Her voice was cut when he pinched the skin of her forearm.
Sorry.
She barely managed to keep her shocked gasp contained, but turned her head towards the next stall as they walked by. Right at this moment, Loki hit the giant and quickly turned towards him. My apologies, he said very courteously.
I would never
The giant
play this
smiled
game
back
against
and
a
gave
man
a little nod while the
she
two
would
parted
obviously
ways.
rage.
Isa glanced at the Asgardian prince, trying to figure out what he was playing with, but he only smiled at her at the nicest way possible, which disturbed her even more. He kept on looking at stalls, slowing down and even stopping at times, smiling a natural, fading completely to the role of mountain giant with his natural smile. Loki finally managed to stop in the very middle of the plaza stall at a stall selling jewelry. My dear, what do you think of his hair stick? He asked, gesturing to the one display on the stall. It took Isa a moment to finally realize he was talking to her, and she jumped, ignoring the deadly gaze he threw at her for what had been a mistake. She leaned towards the long golden stick with the integrated rubies on top. It's lovely, she answered, trying to ignore the mad beating of her heart as Loki's words keep rolling in her head. My dear, he had called her. A beautiful hair accessory for a beautiful lady, the merchant said, smiling at the couple. It's a masterpiece in the hair accessory. Truly, the Vanahanam style is very famous recently and very appreciated, and the artwork is from Nevada. The best dwarves made this jewel. The best dwarves? Loki continued, sounding impressed. Yo, brother, the brothers Broken Sun are. This masterpiece isn't very expensive as it should be. Really, it would only make your lady even more beautiful than she already is. Indeed, a beautiful lady, Loki agreed, throwing a smile at the very blushing Isa. I'll take it, he decided suddenly, turning back to the grinning merchant. Isa frowned at him, but her mouth fell open when he took out a purse full of gold coins in which they were definitely not an illusion. He brought the hair stick and then took it the moment to pin it in her hair, lifting her upper braid, and then complicated bun through which hair stick now stood. Of course, to everyone else, he had added jewelry to the already pretty hairstyle she was wearing. No one should have guessed otherwise. Only Loki and Isa knew the truth behind their appearances. Loki's eyes locked with Isa's for a moment, admiring his work before he gave her a smile she couldn't understand, and turned back toward the merchant. Isn't she beautiful? Magnificent, sir, the merchant answered, with a huge grin after selling such a masterpiece. Where are you from, if I may ask? Loki asked, continuing the conversation. He was using his charm skills against the merchant, who smiled, happy to converse with a good customer. I am from the north of Jonadon. Most of what I sell is dwarf handiwork. Yes. I believe there's a passway between Jonam and Nunavadar in the north, right? Loki questioned, sounding innocently curious. Indeed, sir. You are very knowledgeable.
That would have been very cool.
Busy day. It must be exhausting for you after this entire journey to come here, he said. Arf, this is my job, sir, and if I may say so myself, this year isn't a good year at all, she said, throwing a glance around the crowd and pouting. Really? Isa asked, trying not to let Loki do all the work. Yay, with this war coming, many of our usual customers didn't come. The war? Loki repeated, leaning forward. Really, I only heard rumors of it, but I'm not from around here, and I thought it was just hearsay. Not hearsay at all, sir. The war is very serious, the merchant answered, shaking her head and frowning at the idea of the war ruining their business. I don't know the details, but I've heard from another merchant who lives here in Asgard, and he said some guards are talking at the tavern. King Fortunar has sent his spies to Asgard. To Asgard, yay! She exclaimed, with a voice as low as possible. Asgard? How so? Isa continued, faking shock. Yay, Asgard, all the way to the Queen's chambers. No, the lady gasped. It sounded naive enough for Loki to felt Isa's nails digging into his forearm. At the very end, that her mother, who was a queen's maid, would have been a spy, made her tremble. Isa and had mentioned her mother being manipulated and used from outside force, which is why she decided to come. But apparently the Mountain Guardian Giant's side, they have heard about the spies. Loki did not react, not wanting to think about Eva's mother truly being a spy. Mostly, however, he didn't want to think about the consequences for the Cedar user if it turned out to be true. Yay, the Queen's chambers. I don't know why the king wouldn't want a war against Asgard, but because of this tension, no Asgardian or Vanrane customers this year, and many dwarves and elves decided to stay away from a possible battlefield. Truly, this year is a very bad year for us, she finished, sighing and glancing once again at the crowd with a pitiful look. Do you know why the king would do such thing? Loki asked, hoping to gain more information. Nay, but some say it's revenge, but I know it's nothing more than his reasons. I heard other rumors say about the fortress, you know. The fortress, Loki repeated, his mind paying full attention. You, some nobilism serving the king, have to start to come these last few days from all over Jonadam. They are preparing for battle. Some must even be riding. I do hope one of those noblemen will come by our market. We might sell a bit more. He's arriving today, really? Loki asked. You, with all the troops and maidens, it'll be impressive. These noblemen are always impressive, aren't they? They are indeed, he murmured absent-mindedly. The merchant smiled at him, but for another customer stopped at her stall, and she turned her attention to see the new arrival. Thank you very much, Loki said to the merchant. Very welcome, sir, she exclaimed with a broad smile. He and Isa started to walk away from the stall, slowly making their way through the crowd. Loki glanced at her, opening his mouth to talk, but he saw her head was hanging low, eyes filled with terror and sadness. He hesitated, not knowing what to say. She had just heard that her mother was considered a spy, here as well as in Asgard. Before he could say a thing, however, Isa lifted her head and mustered all the courage to take a strong. She turned towards him, acting as natural as possible, but the fear in her eyes didn't go unnoticed. Where did that purse come from? She asked, frowning at the memory of the purse he got out of his pocket to buy this third stick. He hesitated slightly before deciding to act as normal as she was doing. A giant I hit earlier, he answered with a smile. Isa recalled the rich man from earlier Loki had hit by accident. He had stolen the purse from him so quickly and efficiently that no one had noticed. You clever little thief,
I'm catching up a little bit,
whispered with an amazed smile. Of course I am, Loki. I am Loki after all, he answered with a satisfied smile. You know that you paid for that hair stick was probably not dwarf's handiwork, though, she asked. Oh, it is, he replied while she frowned. Do you think I would have recognized dwarf's work? Most of my mother's jewelry is dwarf-made. The merchant might be a fool, but she is not a liar, and thanks to her, I have a plan to infiltrate Utgard's fortress. Did you not learn enough? I thought you only needed to find out about Fortune and wanted the war, or not. You know he does now, Isa said with trembling voice, confused. I still don't know about my mother's maid's betrayal, but if it was their own will and they just were really spies or not, it won't be enough for All-Father. I need to find out why Fortune wants war. He said seriously, jaw clenched. The merchant mentioned revenge. Any idea what that could be?
Yes,
she asked, secretly thankful for the fact that he was still trying to find out the truth about her mother. Loki's lips pierced in a thin line, and he shook his head slightly, not wanting to admit his lack of knowledge. He had no idea what kind of revenge Fortuner would seek against Asgard. He was a pretty young king who had been on the throne for only 3 centuries, and many had accused him of being too weak. Perhaps he just wanted to prove himself worthy of his title. Loki swallowed, frowning at himself at his heart clenched tightly in his chest. Even if Forger wanted to prove himself worthy, it wasn't a reason to go at war and put his people in danger. It was reckless, dangerous, and idiotic. I shall make you proud, father. Loki wanted to prove himself worthy too, but he was different from his king, right? Loki? He looked back at Isa and realized she had called him several times and was staring at him worriedly. He quickly looked away, not wanting her to understand that this time in the lame brook was still haunting him, just like his cold feeling in his heart. Let's go spy on King Fortunar, he said, his voice sounding confident, but his gaze was distant and worried.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, Ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.